Welcome, MBA fans and friends. Nicole Wilson, your Vice President of Economic Development with the Midland Business Alliance. I have the absolute pleasure of being joined by Avik Dey, President and CEO of Capital Power Corporation, joining us here for this edition of the Investor Spotlight. And welcome. Thank you for making the time today.
Hi, Nicole. It's great to be here.
Yeah, thank you. A little bit of a trip for you to join us here.
It has been, but it's always great to be here. I joined our company in May of 2023, and the very first site I visited was MCV in Midland.
Wonderful.
So this is a special place for me.
Wonderful. Well, always a pleasure to have you here in our community. My favorite question to start with our leaders is why MCV? Why the energy industry? What makes it? What drew you to this profession?
It's a great question. So I have a mentor. His name is Steve Bell, and I started in the energy industry as a summer intern more than 25 years ago. And I had an opportunity to sit with him as an intern. Mm-hmm. And he asked me, "What do you want to do, Avik, after you graduate from school?" And I said, "I love international business." Yeah, I was 20 at the time. I didn't know what that meant, but I knew that I wanted to be part of a global industry, one that shaped communities, one that mattered. And what he described to me was, he said, "Look, imagine the world is a chessboard and countries and industries are pieces on that chessboard." Mm-hmm. Well, energy at the time was one of the only industries that the whole world was your chessboard. Mm-hmm. Because what happened in energy moved the world. Wars were fought over it. People's lives were made from it. Mm-hmm. Communities were built from it. Borders were drawn from it. And so that's what attracted me into the energy industry. And MCV for us, when I look at post-industrial North America, and you look at Midland and how the petrochemical industry started here, and you look at the history of MCV having once been a nuclear site, one that was ultimately mothballed, and then being the product of American ingenuity of coming in, refurbishing it and restarting it and turning it into a preeminent power plant. It's pretty much the epitome of what it means to be, enterprising, entrepreneurial, and ambitious. So for us, it's an amazing plant. It's an amazing team, and it's an honor for it to be part of our fleet.
Wonderful. Well, we're certainly happy to have you, and can absolutely echo, the importance of mentorship and helping you to see where you fit or where you could fit, right? So much appreciated. So you've spent a little time in Midland. Is there a favorite spot you like to visit when you're here?
Well, for me, Midland is so incredible as a place because, I'm a bit of an energy nerd. So I've always been a student of the industry. Sure. Just describing what I said to you.
Yes.
And for me, the first time I came to Midland was that second week I joined the company. Wow. And just the place that Dow is from.
Yeah.
Is, it's a huge part of the post-industrial revolution story of how the Western economies are built. So that was, for me, a huge part of the excitement of first coming here. It's, Midland, for as small a place as it is, it's incredibly well known the world over. If you're an engineer, if you're in the energy business, Dow Chemical.
Yes.
And so to come here and see the community that's been built in this little postage stamp in Michigan, for me, that was really exciting. And then obviously rolling into the H Hotel and realizing, oh, this whole thing is kind of built around the periodic table. As a nerd, it's
very clever.
As a nerd, it was pretty cool.
Yes, very clever. Yeah. And I think we've had a conversation internally about when we talk about talent and like the reflection of how do we characterize that. Calling it the human element is really just such a fun connection. So I echo that nerdiness sometimes. So tell me about mission, vision, values for MCV and Capital Power whichever way you'd like to take it. I'm sure they're synonymous, but would love to hear kind of how you connect to those elements of the company.
Our company was born from a 150-year-old utility in Alberta. And Alberta, as a province, the equivalent of our states here in the U.S., is one that's industrial in nature.
Sure.
The auto industry was born here. In Alberta. The energy industry and the agriculture industry was born there in Canada. So that, that sensibility, that focus on doing real things, adding real value, building, operating, safety, and just the emergence of community and the importance of people. I think those values are what our company was born from in Alberta.
Sure.
And those are absolutely virtues here in Michigan. And I think being close to those businesses and industries that build and create environments for people to do things, to have lives, to grow and prosper, I think for us, that's where we tend to go. Sure. Because that's where our assets and our people are valued. And so, we're really excited about where Michigan is as a state and its emergence as we continue to see the trend of industrial reshoring, growth around AI, us all collectively entering into this new age. Michigan's got the opportunity to be a leader in that.
Of course.
And it's based upon that, centuries worth of, industrial capabilities of, building, growing, and optimizing.
And really laying that foundation for what's next.
Yeah.
Wonderful. So for being as physically large as MCV is, you have a pretty lean crew. So some really talented individuals that you have on your staff here. How many employees does MCV have locally?
We have 75 plus employees here, which is for the largest cogeneration plant in all of the United States. It's incredibly impressive.
Yes. And across Capital Power, a little larger, I'm sure.
We are just over 800 people across the company.
Okay. So I think we've had conversations locally where colleagues have said, gosh, there have to be like 150 over there. I said, no, it's a smaller crew, but really does a great job. All of our interactions have been so positive with MCV and with Capital Power. And, I'll give a quick shout out to Bryn Hammond, who shares a spot on our board of directors and helps to kind of guide our organization. So thanks, Bryn.
Thanks, Bryn.
And then we'd love to know kind of you've talked a lot about the broader impact of the company and the energy industry and kind of how that lays the foundation for industry. So I appreciate you covering that. Every organization kind of has that strategy backbone. So if you were to share maybe a little bit of that crystal ball of what's next, where is MCV going or Capital Power? As you've mentioned, there's a lot of industry shift or trends in AI and data centers and all of these pieces, something that very much has to be on the radar in the energy industry. What do you see next?
Well, what's amazing about where we are on electricity is something that is, a necessity for life.
Of course.
And for the better part of a generation, it hasn't been a kitchen table conversation for us here in North America because we had plentiful of it. And if you and I had talked any time in the last 25 years about electricity demand growth in the United States, we would have said the following. We've got lots of excess supply. We're transitioning from fossil fuels to clean and reducing emissions. And overall, GDP growth is declining in the United States. Our population is aging, and technology is improving energy efficiency. So on a whole, the electricity system or the supply stack is in great shape. And by the way, we're actually replacing coal and old natural gas assets at a 2-to-1, 3-to-1 clip in renewables. So for every megawatt I retire of an old coal plant or an old gas plant, I'm replacing with 2 or 3 solar, wind, or battery.
Sure.
So from a system perspective, we were in amazing shape. And lo and behold, we go into the pandemic. There's trillions of dollars of economic stimulus that goes into the global economic system. And then the geopolitical environment changes, where we are now reshoring a lot of that industrial capacity and build that for a generation was offshoring.
Sure.
And then in addition to that, we're now seeing global GDP growth. While we're still seeing all those other trends that were underway around electrification, automation, all of which need more power. And by the way, that's before any of us could spell AI.
Sure.
And so now the system requirements have been completely flipped on its head.
Mm-hmm.
And so for the first time in a generation, we're now looking out, and we have to have real hard conversations around, well, how do we maintain the reliability of our electric system?
Sure.
How do we maintain affordability of our electric system? Because how the system was designed over the last 75 years was one that was hub and spoke.
Sure.
We build big infrastructure.
Mm-hmm.
We deliver it out to the people and the businesses that need it. And all of that shared infrastructure, transmission lines, transformers, pipelines supporting it, those are all shared amongst all of the users.
Sure.
And so for all of us that look at our monthly utility bills, in many places it's 3-4 times what it was more than a decade ago.
Mm-hmm.
But today, if you look at your bill, 2/3 of that cost is going to be costs that are shared, not the power that you consume.
Mm-hmm.
That would have been the inverse a decade ago.
Mm-hmm.
So the bill 10 years ago would have been 1/3 of what it is, but 2/3 of it would have been the actual power.
Sure.
And so this is the conversation all of us are now having to have. Policymakers, industry players, politicians, and all of us at home. What's important? How do we ensure our country can grow? How do we ensure there are great jobs available for people graduating college, and we're creating communities that are thriving? And electricity, because of where the world is going now, is the backbone and foundation to that. And so our philosophy is, we have a North Star. Our North Star is powering change by changing power. And what we mean by that is we have to do all things in the power system better. And if not us, then who? And how do we facilitate those conversations? How do we innovate? How do we build? And how do we address that challenge of affordability and reliability in partnership with our key stakeholders,
Sure.
not in competition with? So one of the things we're incredibly proud about right here in Midland is our partnership and work with CMS.
Mm-hmm.
We have our plan, and we just announced a long-term recontracting of that asset, extending the life of MCV.
Wonderful.
And what that does is it continues to provide electricity to the consumers in Michigan at a fixed price over a long period of time. So it takes advantage of the existing infrastructure that we've all already paid for.
Sure.
And so it maintains that in delivery into the system. But I think that's one of the greatest opportunities we have across North America. We use the example of MCV and our partnership with CMS everywhere we operate, because it's an example of leveraging existing infrastructure and extending it, upgrading it, and finding ways to actually drive affordability for the consumer ultimately, or our customers.
Sure. So from our perspective, or in our industry in economic development, we're always, quantifying capacity. And every site selector or every project that might come forward, or request for information, or whatever that looks like, every prospect that we talk to will give us a list of infrastructure requirements, and not only power. So we've seen some shifts in that industry, I would say over the last, 10 years, maybe. I would even go 5 since, COVID started really, where they're looking for information around, housing availability. They're looking for information around childcare infrastructure. So not necessarily only the physical infrastructure that you talk about that's critical to the operation, but how do we support the whole of the company? So I really appreciate you kind of sharing the need for that shared infrastructure and to tackle the problem of shared infrastructure together as opposed to one entity kind of taking that on their own. So I appreciate that.
Well, not all communities have the benefit of a DAO.
This is true. This is true.
So from a development perspective, ultimately, communities have two sources of revenue.
Sure.
Residential tax base and commercial tax base.
Correct.
And the greater both are, the greater opportunities it creates for the entire community.
Absolutely.
And, I think as we think about that economic development question, ultimately it's how do you bring jobs? Those jobs bring people.
Mm-hmm.
The people brings economic output, and that creates ancillary service needs and opportunities for businesses and value creation. And I think that's what's exciting about where we are now, because where we were collectively for most of the 2000s and 2010s, we all benefited from this economic super cycle that drove lower interest rates, that brought lots of money into the system.
Of course.
But it was in service of the China super cycle in the 2000s that created all this demand effectively.
Mm-hmm.
And now we're, as we enter into the AI revolution and look to reshore industrial capacity and build things again, it's really about generating economic productivity inside our borders to help support that job creation. So that for me is what it's an opportunity for all of us to reset and assess how do we encourage and build economic output in the communities that we live.
Absolutely. I appreciate that. Data centers are the topic of the day. We hear about them all the time. And I think I've shared at least inside our walls that we probably speak to a data center developer at least weekly. And certainly a part of that attention or attraction is MCV's presence in our community. And certainly Dow's operations and the other iPark partners, Corteva and DuPont and Trinseo and Cabot, and I think there are a few others I'm probably neglecting at the moment. My apologies. But we're always seeing that demand. And so I think the question becomes, where does MCV or where does Capital Power sit, not only just here in our community, but broadly? We know that data centers are a huge source of contention in some communities. But from being an expert in the industry, how do you feel about data center development? What are your thoughts?
Well, when you look at the power sector, we have utilities and then we have independent power producers.
Mm-hmm.
If you roll back the clock and say, well, why do we have independent power producers? Why do they exist? Mm-hmm. Well, we existed because there were large customers like petrochemical plants, mm-hmm. like refineries, like pulp and paper mills, mm-hmm. all whom were large load customers. Sure. That either could not connect to the grid, mm-hmm. or because their demands were so high and so bespoke, they could afford their own solution that was cheaper, effectively, mm-hmm. than connecting to the grid and connecting to that shared infrastructure. So now we've got AI and we have data centers. In terms of pursuing the opportunity around teaching language learning models, and where that goes on, app building and inference computing, all of that is incredibly exciting. Mm-hmm. But from a consumer perspective, it's really about how do we introduce large load whether it was a data center
Sure.
or it was a petrochemical facility, it actually doesn't matter. It's just that we have this new load. It happens to be, capacity that's required by the biggest technology companies in the world.
Sure.
But the issues we have to solve are system issues at a community level.
Yes.
It's not really about whether this big tech company wants to build a data center. It's how do we responsibly and affordably introduce this new large load into the electric system without compromising reliability,
Sure.
without compromising affordability. But I think the conversation gets lost in this is big tech and it's coming into the community and we don't know what the implications are. There's obviously lots of conversations around AI, around national security, what the meaning is of it. But the problem facing us right now is just a simple one. And it's not simple in the solution, but it's simple in what do we have to address. How do you incorporate the large load? How do you make sure that the grid maintains reliability for all consumers? And how do we understand the cost allocation of introducing this large load so that the consumer ultimately isn't penalized for this new entrant into the market? So for us, what we're excited about is working with stakeholders to find those solutions, because having these large tech companies come in, a large data center. So if you take a 1 million square foot hyper data center, that would be 1,000 megawatts of power demand. That's the equivalent of, a 1 million person community, that one power plant for that one facility. That could be a 30 to 40 billion US investment. And so the industry and ecosystem that builds around that capacity coming to a community could be very significant and positive in nature. But you've got to address the system issues first. Okay. So we're very positive around the opportunity set. We're very encouraged by all the conversations we're having with the ultimate customers, the hyperscalers, because they have a strong recognition of here's what it means to become a steward in the community of the electricity system, because they have to bring in that large load. And I would just say, the utilities and the RTOs and, the commissioners in all of these regions have been very responsible about it as well, because they recognize what the challenges are when, for the first time in a generation, we're looking out at these really big demand growth projections for electricity. And yet we don't have necessarily the ability to add that new load without having some hard conversations around who's going to pay for it, what does it mean for reliability, what does it mean for the mix of electricity. So we are a company that's 90% focused on natural gas. Well, for the most part, natural gas is critical for reliability, but for the better part of the last decade and a half, it was the old technology that was about to be retired and replaced by, a completely clean system.
Sure.
But the reality is natural gas is cheap, it's efficient, it can be installed quickly, and it has half the emissions of its closest competitor for reliable generation, which is coal.
Sure.
And so in any electricity system, it's a critical technology to deliver load demand growth. It's critical to maintaining reliability. It's critical for maintaining electricity system integrity.
Sure.
And so that's where we're spending our time, is advocating for the importance of natural gas in these systems. We do solar, we do wind, we do batteries, but as we're trying to address this structural issue and this generational opportunity around AI, we have to invest in all forms of this technology.
Of course. And to your earlier point, data centers are the current lightning rod, if you will. And I think, every community really closely evaluates whether an opportunity is right for it. Sometimes with varying degrees of agreement or consensus. But every new user or new opportunity has its own challenges that you have to work through from a systems perspective. So I appreciate that. Let's have a little fun. So every leader goes through a period of growth where we're learning new things, adapting. Is there a particular leader that you like to follow, or a book you've read that really changed a perspective, or a podcast?
Probably the most impactful book we talk a lot about leadership internally.
Of course.
As we've undergone our own culture shift and transformation at Capital Power, because our industry is shifting so rapidly.
Of course.
One of the books that I've really enjoyed reading over the last few years is a book called The $1 Trillion Coach. Okay. And it's a book written by the founders of Google. And it's about this football coach turned leadership coach named Bill Campbell. And it's not here's a 5-point plan to be a better leader, but it really just talks about how you build trust in teams, how do you inspire and create, environments of safety so people can take risk. How do you invest in care and focus about people? Because ultimately it's people that win. It's not strategy that wins.
Sure.
Or it's not assets that win. It's people. So that book for me, there's lots in that book that resonates with me, because something I always say to my teams is, for me in my career, I've had the great fortune of being surrounded by, mentors, bosses, leaders who've owned my outcome as much, if not more, than I did. And that's created the opportunity set for me.
Sure.
And so that's something I greatly value. And this book is amazing because it talks about those values.
I'm really excited to check it out. I haven't heard that one yet.
Yeah.
So that's a new one for me. Wonderful. I'll add it to my list. I guess, any particular news from the team or something exciting we should look for, or anything like that you'd like to share?
Well, we shared it last year, which is the extension of the life of MCV here.
Yes.
It is it's a bellwether transaction for us and partnership. The opportunity to partner with CMS, a leading utility across North America, and demonstrate that, it really demonstrates the importance of natural gas, and it demonstrates the importance of MCV to the electricity system in Michigan, especially in light of, the clean electricity plan, and, how we do need more natural gas as we move towards a cleaner grid. And the fact that we were able to extend that for a 10+ year period of time is a really great market signal to where we're going. And it's demonstrating how we can make short, near-term decisions that make sense for reliability and affordability in the community. But most importantly, it's leveraging existing infrastructure.
Right.
This is the smartest thing we can do across all of our electricity systems across North America. We will ultimately need to build new capacity, and communities are going to have to make those decisions. But if there are opportunities to go into existing infrastructure and get more from it, that is the best thing for the bottom line of our ratepayers. And so for us, this is hopefully the first of many of these types of transactions we can do and partnerships we can do here inside Michigan and, everywhere across North America.
Wonderful. Well, congratulations on that. We're celebrating with you. We have some great friends and partners at Consumers as well. So having you both working for the good of Midland is a wonderful, wonderful thing for us. So thank you so much for your time, making your way all the way here to Midland, and just very grateful to have you join me this morning.
Great. Thanks, Nicole.
Thank you.